morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Good morning, David.
Good morning, Dave.
Good morning.
Oh, geez.
I did.
After we open the meeting, I'm going to have some background noise here. I've got a couple of little kids around, so I'm going to let Dave handle it after we get open.
Sounds good, boss. And we do have, Ron, are you going to do any public comment at all?
I might just say a couple things, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, we do have Ron here, provide some public comment, Dave.
Okay. Well, it is 8 o'clock, so if we just stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Yeah, okay.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm like, whoa.
So for the record, this is a special meeting of the JCIDA, informational only. We're looking to gather more information with regards to solar projects and the effects on our farmland in Jefferson County. If you hear noise in the background, I'm happy to be down here in Florida with my grandkids. Just met my new grandson, so it's a pretty good time. With that, I'm going to open the floor. Anyone that wants to address the board or give us any information, I believe Ron Robbins is with us. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I just want to make a couple quick comments. I certainly appreciate the board for making the effort to bring information forward in regards to siting solar here in the county and the importance that's being placed on that work. Of course, it's no secret that we're one of the potential impacted landowners here in the county. So we certainly have a vested interest in this whole endeavor and the decisions that will be made accordingly. I think it's important, well, I certainly think it's important that the views of the Farmland Protection Board and certainly those of Farm Bureau, been a long time Farm Bureau member, and certainly put a lot of credence in the policy that they bring forward. So I think it's important for those views to be heard. I do also think, though, that it's really important that the views of the impacted landowners, not just us, but others impacted here in the county, be sought and heard as well in this process. And to my knowledge to date, I don't know that that's taken place, and hopefully I just strongly encourage you to make those efforts. The agricultural sector here in the Northeast is certainly challenged, and that, is an opportunity, and we'll get into a lot of that today, but, I think at some point in time, there needs to be some thought and some discussion about what those challenges are and what our future looks like here in the Northeast, especially for the core segment of our industry, the dairy industry, and, and how siting potential solar projects can both challenge and benefit that important industry here in our region. So with that, I'm certainly open and offer my not only my opinions, but my expertise in helping you meet some of these challenges and making these decisions and providing information. So I would hope that you would reach out to me and we can have some open dialogue going forward. Opportunity to be here today.
Thanks, Doug. Dave?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Doug, for providing your input. We appreciate it. So the purpose of the meeting is
That was Ron.
Ron. Oh, my God.
That's twice I heard you say.
He's popular this morning, Ron, not so much. I forgot
Yeah.
to do. But anyways, so the purpose is to learn about the Jefferson County Ag and Farmland Protection Board, their policies, their position on siting solar projects on prime agricultural soils. So with that, we'll let Doug talk for a few minutes and then give the board opportunities to ask questions of Doug, and then we'll go to John after that. So Doug, would you like to speak, sir? Well, you're muted, Doug.
Good morning, thank you.
Good morning,
Is there a
sir.
bad connection or is it just me?
What was that?
I had a very difficult time hearing you. Is that just me?
It's the masks. So you're still having a hard time hearing me?
No, I can hear you now. I think it's a connection.
Okay.
I see leaning in there.
It almost sounds like an echo, like a little bit of an echo in the room, maybe.
All right, let me turn it down a little bit, see if I can.
Let me interrupt.
Yeah, our apologies, Doug. Let us just get our technical difficulties challenged. Does this sound any better? Okay, all right, very good. All right, so Doug, we apologize for interrupting, but it was good that that was brought up. Doug, would you go ahead and share your information with us, sir?
Yes, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. Throughout my life, the majority of my on-farm time has been spent working to keep agriculture viable and to make it possible for anyone who would want to be involved in agriculture, no matter the size of their operation or the description of it, no matter whether it's now or in the future, to be able to do that. In my comments this morning, you received a letter back a few weeks ago, months ago, regarding the actual only policy that the Farmland Protection Board had come up with, a recommendation at that point. And this meeting has come up rather rapidly. We were not able to really pull together a meeting. And our role is that of an advisory to the Board of Supervisors or Board of Legislators. And so, we as such don't have a lot of policies. I do think, though, the statements I'm making today are my own opinion and not formal policy positions, but I do believe they reflect the majority feelings of the members of the board. I'm a firm believer in private property rights and the right of the landowner to do as he pleases as long as he is not harming anyone else or destroying the natural resource. I think there are many locations with less than prime soils that are suitable for community solar, and I think that makes sense. But I would ask, why are developers avoiding deforesting sites and wetlands? Why? We all know why not, but those resources, are they more important than our prime agricultural land? Why don't we give the precious resource of prime ag soils the same protections? Isn't the production of food just as important? When it comes to large-scale solar on prime agricultural soils, I'm very concerned for the following reasons. Prime soils are one of Jefferson County's greatest resources. They have been for generations and will continue to be if available for crop production. The destruction of prime agricultural soils by allowing large-scale solar development and giving them subsidies and incentives with public monies isn't appropriate. Once these projects are built on these soils, I don't believe there is any way the land resource will be brought back into production with the yields they currently have today. I am uncertain if after the installation phase, the true economic impact on the county will be as great as agriculture's current impact. When you consider ag economics multiplier effect,
Will we continue to be able to support our agribusinesses and ag manufacturers, or will they downsize or go out of business? I would suggest that it's likely that the large-scale solar development proliferation in Jefferson County will exacerbate the trend of consolidation of dairy farms and will force more families off the farms, actually causing a decrease in the agricultural economic impact. Also, I'm concerned for my grandchildren's generation and pray that in 40 or 50 years, Jefferson County won't be the Rust Belt of the state, with dilapidated solar fields where decommissioning funds weren't adequate. Not to mention the loss of opportunity to farm those lands. While there have been few or no independent comprehensive studies of the true economic or social impact of these developments, it's not difficult to figure out why developers are targeting those prime soils with easy access to infrastructure to export power out of the area. It's easier, faster to develop, and more profitable. In conclusion, why are we considering giving tax breaks to destroy one of our most valuable resources? I don't think it's appropriate to take local economic development dollars or tax breaks to support the destruction of one of the county's most non-replaceable assets, prime agricultural soils. The decisions you make regarding large-scale solar on prime farmland will have a huge impact. If the decisions, it isn't clear not to support these projects with local public monies, I would suggest a moratorium to allow more public information, discussion, and policy development. Thank you for allowing me to share my views, and I will be sending a copy of this to the rest of the Ag and Farmland Protection Board today, just so they are aware of what I have said. I guess the other part of it is that I don't have it in my formal remarks, but I am a little disappointed as I prepared for this. I had as many questions as I had answers. I really wish we had had the opportunity to go ahead with the public forum that the Ag Advisory Committee had suggested, where we could have brought in outside resources so that we and public authorities, public officials could learn more about the impact and possible solutions for them. Thank you.
Doug, before we open it for questions, would you please send a copy of your remarks to me so that I can share them with Peggy?
Yes. I can do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so board members, do you have any questions for Doug Sheldon?
I have one, Doug. You mentioned early on, community solar, which tend to be smaller projects versus the utility scale projects. Do you see as big an impact with we've approved, 11 utility, community solar projects. Do you see those where they're spread out through different areas of the county having as much as impact on agricultural as the utility scale will?
I don't think, if they're properly cited, and I have concerns about that, we had an opportunity on our own farm to participate in the community, as is almost every landowner in Jefferson County, that's adjacent to a three-phase line. But we have chosen at this point not to take advantage of it. We did not want to give up productive ground. We're in the business of farming, it's kind of like selling building lots. We want to grow crops, not houses. And so that's the real opportunity. And land really is a limiting factor in Jefferson County. But to the community solar, I think if those are properly cited, and the ones that I'm familiar with in this end of the county, many of them are on less than prime, what I would call prime soils, where they're talking about doing them. I think, they may be a real answer. I am concerned, however, when we start taking, large tracts of land and producing power that's gonna be exported out of the area. I think that, and to put public dollars with those is a real concern.
And Jim, just one last comment on notices out to us a while ago. I don't think holding that is off the table yet. I think we're still trying to learn what the issues are to adequately prepare those type of concepts. Is that an accurate statement, Jim? You know, I don't think we're dead set against holding and supporting those forums. It's just, we need to know more about what the real issues are.
Right. You know, you can't just throw it wide open to start with. There's, you know, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Doug, I have a question from, kind of toward the scope of the farmland's sphere of influence. Do you feel that the definition of prime farmland will be adequate to make that a decisive factor? In other words, right now, for instance, soil types, you know, that's primarily the first criteria for determining prime agricultural farmland. But is that a true reflection? I mean, it's not considering soil depths, it's not considering drainage capabilities. Where's the Farmland Protection Board comfortable and drawing the line in the sand? Do you think they can do that? Come up with a good.
We really haven't delved into it to that degree. There's a lot more research that needs to go into it to help define those areas better. I think all of those points, you know, from soil depth to drainage, all of those sorts of things are critically, you know, the volume of land and all of that is critical. You know, I think it's all part of the discussion.
Would it be appropriate for me to add to that answer? Would that be okay?
But
You know, having worked in the soil water conservation field for 13 years plus, having a degree basically in natural resources conservation, the science behind classifying our soils into those categories, that's pretty extensive. That takes into account drainage, slope, depth to bedrock. You know, I would offer to the board that the science of those classifications, I don't know how you could take it any farther than using the science that's been provided to us. So I just offer that for consideration.
well, that clears it up because you're saying it's already there. It's already part of the criteria.
It's, yeah, that's how they classify soils, is everything you said goes into how they classify that soil type.
Okay, that clears that up.
Other questions for Doug?
Doug, do you think, as some of this siting takes place, I think you touched on it, the sheer volume. I'm thinking of places where there may be a 20-acre field and it's a potential site for solar. There may be 5 acres of it that is going to get classified as prime farmland, and then there could be the other 15 acres of land that is outside the prime farmland category. Can there be some provisions there that consider that factor? Do you rule out the whole 20 acre because of 5 acres? Is that part of should that be part of the acceptability of it?
And I think that you're right on there. I think, you know, if you've got that kind of situation where, and I don't know what the percentage is, whether it's less than 50% or 25% of the parcel or the site is prime soils. Yes, I think those are better sites than when we have, you know, clearly large tracts of prime soil.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Do any of the board members who are viewing the meeting today, Rob, Lisa, Dave, and I'm not sure who else is up there. Excuse me.
Chris Powers.
And Chris, do any of you have questions of Doug? I want to make sure we get everybody into this conversation before we move forward.
I do not have any questions. Very informative, and I appreciate all the comments today.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, any more questions, Paul, Ed? All right, Doug, if you don't mind hanging out with us, a conversation may come up that we'd like you to be part of as we move forward. So we'll transfer the hot seat over from you, Doug, to Mr. Wagner. And my understanding is we have that wired up even a little bit hotter for John. Only kidding, John. For those that don't know, John is the field staff supervisor for New York Farm Bureau. I'm not putting everything into the title, John, but John is extremely familiar with Jefferson County. He has provided professional assistance to Jefferson County Farm Bureau for at least 20 years, John?
22 many, Jay.
And Farm Bureau has policy regarding solar projects. And John, would you care to start us off sharing some of those policies?
Yeah, so again, thank you all for the opportunity to participate today. As Jay said, my name is John Wagner. My official title is Deputy Director of Member Relations for New York Farm Bureau. In that capacity, I do oversee our field staff that works with our 52 county farm bureaus across New York State. I also work closely on a daily basis with 4 county farm bureaus, Jefferson, Lewis, Madison, and Oneida. And I will say that this topic is one that all of those counties are dealing with at a county level. This is something that every county farm bureau and every county government across New York State is dealing with right now. We all understand the mandates of the state and federal government and the push for renewable energy. And we know that solar panels are not going to be sited in Manhattan. So we have to work with our upstate landowners to meet those renewable energy goals and balance that with private property rights and the need to protect farmland, our most valuable resource moving forward, our prime agricultural soils and our soils of state significance. As Jay said, the Farm Bureau does have policy on this issue. Doug and Ron and others are very familiar with how Farm Bureau policy is developed. It's developed from the grassroots county level. Ideas start at farmers' kitchen's table. They may start at a diner where a couple of guys are talking about an issue, and it works its way up. It's discussed at the county level, voted on by our members there. Then it's discussed at the state level, and it's voted on by our delegates at the state level. So Farm Bureau policy is vetted through various levels, and then the truly democratic process is voted on and approved. Just a couple of visuals. I shared this with Jay. This is our state Farm Bureau policy book. Soup to nuts, 150 some pages of statements and policy initiatives that help to guide our public policy staff in Albany when working with legislators, when working with state regulatory agencies like DEC. Our staff can revert back to this document, this book, and say, yeah, this is how our farmer members feel about this issue, about this topic. So we do have some policy, but I would want to couch it and say to everybody that the discussions that our farmer members and our organization has had over the last 3 to 5 years on this topic as it has become more prevalent. The policy changes annually, and it can change annually, and it is evolving every year. New New variations of topics are put forward, new variations and points of view are put forward, again, voted on and then changed. So every December, we need to take a look at where the Farm Bureau stands on certain policy issues, because that's when we'll know where we stand on a new issue. But for now, the policies in this book is where we stand currently on issues. We also like to bill ourselves as an educational resource for our members. So I did want to share the fact that we do have a document that we put together. We hired outside legal counsel to prepare this document. It's entitled Leasing Your Farmland for Wind and Solar Energy Development, a guide for farmers and landowners. So we have that as an available resource for our farmer members and our rural landowners to think about things before entering into agreements with companies. And I guess I would be remiss if I also didn't, in full disclosure, mention that the Farm Bureau at the state level, we do have a business sponsor relationship with one of the developers who's doing projects in the county and across New York State. Boralex is an agricultural business sponsor member of the Farm Bureau, just as Farm Credit East is, and just as Bayer Science is. So I did want to make sure that that was out there for public record. In no way does that affect any of our policy statements. Again, those are developed by our members from the grassroots level. Again, various topics within that policy book, anything from renewable energy to solar siting to farmland preservation techniques. Our organization does have policy that believes in supporting renewable energy projects. We understand that we need to be engaged in the conversation, whether it's wind power, solar power, hydroelectric. We have many policies in support of enacting renewable energy across the state. We also believe that the way to ensure farmland protection is to maintain profitable farm operations. That's a bedrock principle of ours. If we have profitable farms across the state, we'll have farmland preservation. Into some specifics on policy, I know Jay had a copy of the book. He'd reviewed some of our sections on policies. So again, these are the most recently passed policies as of December 2020 that we will be basically sticking to and discussing as we move forward. I picked out just a couple. Basically, again, we recommend requiring solar companies to purchase a bond to cover the cost of removal of solar panels in the event the company is failure or bankruptcy due to a failed lease agreement. Again, we have 56 different policies. I was just going to pick out a couple. We support prioritizing placing solar on non-agricultural lands, such as brownfields and previously disturbed industrial sites. We support the collaboration of farm organization leaders, solar developers, and solar development associations to develop a best management solar siting practices guide for projects larger than 10 acres and more than 25 megawatts. Concepts to include, just a few: minimize and mitigating the siting on actively farmed farmland, particularly class 1 through 4 soils. Commit to the following New York State Ag and Market guidelines when siting solar installations on farmland. Seek to develop practical agricultural co-utilization projects where the farmers involved in the project design, ensuring active farming in between and around solar panels for the lifetime of the project. Be receptive to and cultivate projects that involve multiple landowners to maximize the use of lands not actively cultivated. Identify, in collaboration with the landowners, specific tracts of land that are not actively farmed and engage developers in utilizing those sites rather than the productive farmland. This goes back to something that was just mentioned earlier. We recommend prime soil mitigation when prime soils are present when siting an alternative energy production facility. And we have steps A through G in here that our delegates and our farmer members recommend as policies and possibilities and how that mitigation would work. I mean, I don't want to get into reading all of them, but one of them, the first one does talk about what Doug touched on, and I think that question was earlier about. It's recommended that mitigation be assessed on a sliding scale relative to the percentage of the project that is situated on prime soils. Projects situated on less than 5% of the total project being on prime soils should have a mitigation factor of 1.25 for every acre of prime soil. 5 to 25% factor of 1.5, 26 to 50% should have a factor of 2 and larger. The mitigation should occur within 5 miles of the proposed project. Mitigation should be performed on soil classes 2 and 3. So this is how our delegate body feels. This is how our farmer members develop policy. And I would say again, this policy can change as of December of 2021 as we work through this policy development process, as our delegates engage in conversation across the state. Again, this is a hot button topic. Further discussion will be had and we'll develop new policy. I would just suggest that our point person for staff on this out of our Albany office is our Deputy Director of Public Policy, Elizabeth Wolthurst. And I would recommend that if the county does entertain a public forum, that possibly she could come and participate via Zoom technology or possibly in person. She's the point person who sits on a lot of work groups in Albany with DEC, the Office of Renewable Energy, NYSERDA, Ag and Markets, and in developing and working through regulatory and policy initiatives. So with that, thank you guys for the opportunity and love to listen in on more of the discussion.
Thank you very much, John. Very appreciated. Board members, do you have any questions for John on what he talked about?
My question would be, is your policy book available electronically that you can send to Jay and you can share with our board?
Yes, would you want the entire book or would you want just some specific sections on renewable energy and farmland preservation, some of the things that I picked out previously?
Well, Jay could make a decision what's important to us, but initially the solar, because that's what we're inundated with. Right now, we have a new community solar project that just came through to us yesterday, was happening. We have 5 or 6 utility scale projects that are, none of them are in the ORES queue yet, that are proposed in this county. So that's what's going to be inundating our time. And I think it's important that everyone understand, we're not here to say, yes, you can do the project or no, you can't do the project. We're merely deciding based upon the project and what the communities or the elected officials think is whether we extend benefits to them. That's our sole purpose here. And with Jay, we've had a strong presence in agriculture for was that the rate? Many years, Jay? 22 many years, but so, we're gonna have to be making a decision on, are we gonna support these projects with tax abatement of any type? So I'd love to see the entire policies on solar and anything else that Jay thinks is important to us in his work throughout the county, so. We could send it to Jay, he could cherry pick what he sends us.
I'd be more than glad to share that with Jay electronically, so he can then determine, cut and paste, and pick out specific policies to share with all of you. And I would concur, we just held a meeting last week of the local county Farm Bureau Board of Directors. We had just received a letter about a project that's developing, I think was it the town of Lyme and Brownville.
Correct.
They were asking if the county farm bureau wanted to entertain and be involved in intervenor status. So I do recognize that there's a lot of projects on the books in development for the county. And as I said earlier, across the 4 counties that I work with, there are multiple projects throughout Madison County, Oneida County, and county farm bureaus, county soil and water departments, IDAs. They're all struggling with this balance of solar development and preservation of prime farmland. So it's not a unique situation for everybody by any means.
I mean, there's been a new cog or nut in this whole thing is recent action by the legislature is going to mandate the methodology for doing appraisals on these properties for assessment purposes. And candidly, until we know what those policies are, I don't know how we can even entertain any projects. They have 180 days to establish those. You know, our current UTEP has thresholds of amount of abatement we can give until we know what full taxation is. It's kind of hard to even understand how to negotiate a pilot at this point with the new legislation. So until we see what that is, it's kind of hard for us to move forward with any projects. That's my personal opinion as one board member.
Thanks for the question. I'm sure your roles, John and Jay as well, that there's a great deal of outreach from your end of things. And I don't serve on a planning board nor a town board, but I am curious. I know that they have to have a certain amount of educational credits while they serve on the boards. Are these either required or sessions that they can take, or are they already offered when they have, for instance, like the Tug Hill meeting they used to have in person once a year, now it's of course online? Or are these sessions available so that you can educate those members?
John, I'll tackle that question first. In the past, we have worked with the Jefferson County Planning Department to bring in speakers and offer workshops that those planning and, well, mostly planning board, zoning board members could take to satisfy whatever requirements, and Paul, you would know about the requirements better than me, but so we've worked with Jefferson County Planning to put together workshops in the past on agricultural topics that would help those folks satisfy their training requirements, in part anyways.
The Tug Hill Commission did a great job, and until it was canceled because of the pandemic, I think there was a lot of effort going in to solar development in those workshops, but they never materialized. So hopefully when we get past this mess and we can have them again, that's out there. But the sad part is things are coming fast and furious. Once these projects apply with the ORES, it's 1 year and done, unless they don't accept the applications as complete. So let me ask this of Farm Bureau, have you ever reviewed and looked at the new siting, and do you have concerns about the expedited siting requirements of ORES?
I would probably refer that question back to Elizabeth Walters from our staff. Again, she's our point person who is dealing with Office of Renewable Energy. And in this year's budget language, they also last minute created a new working group to look into some of these things. And we were very concerned about the last minute budget language of this new working group because it doesn't have any farmer landowner representation. It has members of the Farmland Trust and some of these other farmland preservation groups and some legislators, but no actual farmer landowner representation. So we're continuing to work on that right now as well. I would just go back to the training issue really quick and say that the Tug Hill Commission used to do a great job and they were able to do that event in person. I don't know what they're offering, if they're offering online training at all. We used to work closely with them as well to mention and bring up specific topics that we felt were relative to the ag industry in trying to secure presenters from ag and markets. One thing that I have done in the past, and again, it's not as prevalent anymore because of budgetary constraints and COVID and other things, but we used to work closely with the Office of Real Property Tax Service, and we used to do specific training for assessors on agricultural ag assessment issues. That used to be something that was done in person. They're required to get so many credits every year. But with budget cuts at New York State, they have gotten rid of a specific person who managed ag assessments through the Office of Tax and Finance. So now there's just one individual who works on tax and finance issues, but doesn't specialize in ag assessment anymore. out of Syracuse. But that's something that we've done in the past as an organization, is we've worked with that group to develop the training materials for town assessors.
John, I've got a question. First though, I think for public comment, I want to come back to Paul's point and recognizing our jurisdiction as a county government entity, JCIDA. Really, the only tool that we have to affect this whole process is taxation. Are we willing to grant a 50% tax abatement for either 15 or 20 years? That's the only real lever we have to influence this process. So I just want to reiterate that as we try and sort through these processes. The other question I have for you, John, is the other player that potentially may bring a tool to the table to influence siting would be DEC. And DEC is greatly influenced by what Albany is pushing forward. So do you feel, and your working relationship in Albany with DEC as a partner in this process, are they going to be an active player? What tools do they have to really influence this process of denying or accepting a siting on prime farmland? When they've got lots of public policy, but it's policy, it's not levers to really stop or start the project.
Yeah, I mean, I think DEC, and maybe Doug would concur that, I mean, DEC is gonna look at, their primary focus has always been on wetlands and wetland preservation a lot. That's what DEC looks at, but I think they're starting to move more towards soil health, especially as we move towards all of the issues with carbon sequestration and carbon credits. Again, Elizabeth Walters from our organization sits on a work group with DEC right now and others that are working on some new initiatives as it relates to soil health in trying to expand opportunities for soil and water conservation districts to work with landowners in relation to soil health and not so much focus on water quality as a precursor for getting grant money and grant dollars. So there's some new legislation working its way through and some proposals there as well. So I think DEC is going to broaden its work beyond maybe water quality to a little bit more in the area of soil health, especially as we start talking about carbon sequestration and carbon footprint.
Other questions, Paul?
Well, I guess we have to go back to the ORES process where I guess that's where a lot of my concerns are and how it's going to affect you, because it looks like a developer can, if they find, let's say there's a DEC issue, the DEC can assign a monetary amount to the mitigation, they can cut a check and they look the other way. And that's one of the concerns I think we all need to have, whether it's wetlands or soil health. So I guess a lot of my concerns are in the new siting process. They've removed local input, not only from local governments, but from agriculture. I don't have, becoming an interested party or an intervener, I'm not sure how much input you're gonna have, because with the old Article 10 process, there were at least 2 local people that had a seat at the table, not a majority to drive it, but that's my major concern is we're gonna be replacing environmental concerns with how big a check you want to write. And that could affect not only agriculture, but other wildlife as well. So carbon sequestration, I've been reading about, that's an interesting topic that I think is getting more play in what I've been reading about. Is that real? Can it have a real impact?
I think it will, Paul. I think there's, and I think agriculture and specifically in a lot of cases, those soils that we work with are going to be one of the big opportunity areas where we can help to meet those qualifications that have been set for us. You know, I agree with what Ed said, that the only lever you've got is the taxation issue. somewhat of a cynical comment to the DEC thing. They're influencing where developers are looking already because developers just don't want to go head to head with DEC. They don't want to look at potential mitigation opportunities or those sorts of things. You know, it's just easier to go where DEC isn't going to say anything.
John, did you have anything you wanted to add on the carbon sequestration question?
No, I mean, if you guys maybe saw some of the news yesterday, you can already see that the state legislature and others, there were some hearings yesterday talking about some of these issues. You saw how they were talking about paying for it, the possibility of upwards of a new 55 cent per gallon gas tax. So, I mean, these things are being discussed in the state legislature in New York. We have to keep a real eye on these things. So moving forward, I think there's going to be opportunity for landowners to use the valuable resource that they have to help mitigate some of this issue with carbon footprint. And there'll be a real opportunity for landowners, I think.
Well, and I think if you come back to the federal scene currently with the change in the White House administration, coming back to paying for carbon credits, you know, that puts agriculture in a position where there may be income opportunities, and the federal level, I see things happening or discussion going on there now that's really going to push the carbon credit opportunities, particularly toward farmland. It's going to accelerate. Now the question is, where the money's coming from, and will there be monies potentially from taxes, I suppose, but that tax money revenue hopefully will start flowing into the agricultural sector to help offset some sustainability there. We'll see. A lot going on federally there, I think.
Currently, all of the carbon credit programs that are out there, and I think there's upwards of a dozen of them for agriculture to participate in, and none of them are really designed for the Northeast yet. But those are all being funded at this point by companies that want to be able to say they're being socially responsible, and they're putting big dollars into this. At this point, all of the growth so far has been from that particular part, rather than from government. While government's talking about it, a lot of these big businesses are doing something about it.
Do any of the board members online, Rob, Lisa, Chris, Dave, do you have any questions as we're starting to approach 9 o'clock? Want to start to wrap this up if there's not any other questions. Chris, anything?
No, not from me. Thank you.
Okay. Rob, how about you, sir?
Thank you very much for coming in. This is extremely informative for myself. Thank you.
Lisa?
Same thing, no questions, very informative, and it's great to get this information.
Okay. Paul, any last questions, comments?
I'd just like to thank Doug and John for being there. It was very informative.
Well, I'll throw one back to Paul, since we got a couple of minutes. Looking in the toolbox to influence the siting of these projects on prime farmland, I referenced, taxation being one of them. The other one is going to be local zoning laws. So what I throw back to Paul is, from all of his years' experience, local zoning boards, they potentially can through local zoning laws stop and start projects, but under this new siting process,
There's no role for them.
there's no role for them. So really, you look at trying to develop policies and developing a toolbox that influence this things moving forward. There's very few tools in the toolbox to use to influence this one way or the other. That's the problem I see coming.
The only real tool in local zoning is, as it affects us, is there's a section of general municipal law that prohibits us from taking a lease, ownership, or a title to a property unless it's in compliance with local master plans and zoning. So as the state goes through this, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these projects, they may request the state to override local zoning as over restrictive, and then it's gonna come the question to us is, does that prohibit us from extending benefits because it's not in compliance with local zoning? I don't know what or how we might react to that. For example, some towns like the town where Ron and I live, they have a maximum coverage. Okay? I think it's either 40 or 60% of the lot can be covered by solar panels. If they want to use more than that and the state grants it, is that going to create issues? I don't know. So the zoning board may come in to play as they interpret their zoning law if they're requested by a developer. And I think that's occurred in one town already where that, but that only affects projects under ORES. All the projects we approved so far have gone through and received local zoning before we even entertain the projects, which has made them a lot easier because the locals have had their input on any issues. So they've been a little easier for us to deal with.
So I want to thank Ron and Doug and John all for, giving us more information as we're going forward here. I think it behooves us to work with our county legislators and our, all our town officials to see where we're best headed. But, I'm not a proponent of regulating people what they do with their own property at all. But on the same hand, I think that, in my opinion, you gotta look at the benefits to the community. If you have a major production field that goes away, do we tax incentivize the loss of that field? I don't know. These are questions, and that's why we're here today, looking at this, and, we'll continue as a group to get as much information as we can.
Mr. Chairman, are we all set with the questions? Looking for your direction, sir.
I'm all set. Does anyone have any questions or further remarks or anything? Ron, do you have any more after listening today?
Well, again, just to reiterate what I said earlier, I think it's important that we engage all impacted parties in deep conversation about this topic. Going back a year and a half ago, right in this very room, Jay and I pulled together a group of folks. Paul was here, I think Ed was here at the time. Certainly we had Chairman Gray, we had Development Authority, we had Tug Hill, and we began to talk about this particular topic then. And of course, we all know that the last year has been turned upside down, but I think it's vitally important that we don't lose sight of the expertise we have here in this county, and we engage in this dialogue, and we do it with a sense of urgency. And, again, from an agricultural perspective, I disagree some with some things that Doug said. I think we have to look at this from a bigger picture standpoint, not just from maintaining farmland, but like John said, maintaining profitable farms and how we potentially create an income stream on those farms that make sure they are there for the next generations to come. We continually face regulatory burdens and increase overhead costs, making New York State and the Northeast a very difficult place to continue to do business, especially on the farming side. Labor is a significant issue. rising cost structure for taxes and other things. So I just think it's imperative that we take a very broad view of this issue and we really study it, and we study it without bias. You know, whether it's somebody that's having the project cited or somebody that's not. I think it's important that we open our minds and we really go deep into these issues.
I totally agree. Anybody else have anything?
I just want to thank you for the opportunity, and certainly if the Farmland Protection Board can play an additional role, I'd be willing to call a meeting and we can, gather further information or whatever. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Doug.
And Dave, if you don't, well, go ahead, John.
I was just gonna echo Doug's comments and say thank you for the opportunity to participate today. Obviously, again, moving forward, if the Farm Bureau can be any kind of a resource, educational in nature, or if we can bring our public policy staff with their expertise to the table as well in any future endeavor and future meeting, let us know, and we'd like to continue the dialogue as well.
Then Dave, if you don't mind, I just want to remind board members, especially some of our new board members, that our agricultural advisory group is the Jefferson County Agricultural Development Council. And on that council, we have representation from the Ag and Farmland Protection Board, County Farm Bureau, Tug Hill, Cooperative Extension, a variety of farmers, including Ron. Ed sits there as your liaison to that council. So don't hesitate to call upon that council to provide, the assistance to you as you consider these issues. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. If there's nothing else, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Doug.
The issue of that conference, we had the 3 nights. I talked to Dave, I thought we were going to revisit that.
Come up with.
Expand it, not that it's- I just think we can do it.
Dave, love to see you. I think.
Well,
You got a minute?
let's-
Well, originally I didn't hear it very well. I wanted to know more, but that's not because we don't think we should.
Okay.
But, so, and I think 3,
I bet.
am I better